Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. And as always, if you are a recurring viewer or a subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support of my channel. I really appreciate you all being here today. I want to talk briefly about the most recent book that I finished, which was a couple days ago, and that is Accordion Crimes by Annie Proulx. I have read 3 of Annie Proulx's novels now, this being the 3rd. I started with her novel Barkskins and then read The Shipping News, both of which I talked about in previous videos on my channel. And then I picked up Accordion Crimes last week and finished it a couple days ago. And all 3 of her novels that I have read so far have been equally impressive in slightly different ways, but I've enjoyed her writing for some of the similarities between those novels as well. And so I wanted to talk just very briefly about my thoughts on Accordion Crimes. I'm hesitant to title any of these types of videos a review just because I really don't have anything in-depth enough to say about the novel that I think warrants the term review. So instead, I'm going to call this a rambly discussion or a chatty discussion video, something along those lines. It's not a formal review, but I really enjoyed it and I wanted to sit down and share some of my thoughts and feelings about the book and the reading experience. So I read this one jointly between reading the text and then listening to the audiobook. The audiobook was absolutely fantastic. It ran about 15 hours, and then the book is, at least my ebook here, is just over 400 pages. So it's not the most lengthy novel you will ever read, but it was a little bit of on the slightly longer side from some of the novels that I have been reading lately, but I did not feel the length at all. In fact, when it ended, I thought it was a chapter break until I realized it was the end of the book. It's one of those books where you want it to go on another 50 pages, another 100 pages even. So the sort of overall premise of this novel is we are following an object as it passes through the hands of multiple families in a multi-generational, multi-locational saga, if multi-locational is even a word. If not, I will coin it right now. So this follows the journey of an accordion, of a green accordion that is made by an Italian immigrant to America, to Louisiana in 1890, a green accordion that is made and sold, and then is sort of sold off and passes hands through these different families, through different immigrant families to the United States between 1890 and 1990. So we basically have a century-long plot that brings together the stories of, I think it's 8 different immigrant families to the US, and then the way in which this accordion ties into their stories and then likewise ties their stories together. So it focuses a lot on music, the music of different cultures, the application of the accordion in different music of different cultures, but really it's less about music, it's less about the accordion as an instrument, and it's more about using an item to show the similarities between groups that maybe thought of themselves as distinctly different from each other, or in fact had, feuds and rivalries and vendettas against each other, to sort of show the similarities in the underlining aspects of their culture. Annie Proulx's writing is very winding. What I love about it is that we always get, at least in the 3 books that I've read so far and the 4th that I'm currently reading, we always get a central plot, sort of an overarching plot that's rather simple. It doesn't have to be very complicated at all. And then throughout the novel, we get all of these little digressions and rabbit trails off of the main plot that then all eventually wind back in together to this central stream of thought or stream of plot. So particularly in Accordion Crimes, we are following this accordion that has been made by an Italian immigrant that we meet at the beginning of the book. And we followed that accordion through the hands of all of these different families and individuals, and we get glimpses into all of their lives as the story goes, moves along. None of their stories really necessarily connect to each other than the fact that they have all shared possession of this item at one point or another. But we get so many similar types of stories or similar types of characters in each story that it feels very continuous, and it really pulls you through the plot. So it's a lot more about character, and it's a lot more about dialogue and conversation and location, and less about sticking to a very meticulous, detailed plot. With that being said, that does not work for everybody, and I know that some people like to have more of a solid, structured plot, and sort of everything lends itself to the momentum of moving that plot forward, whereas others don't mind more of a meandering type novel. I'm definitely in that latter group. I absolutely love just sort of a very lilting, long, prolonged journey of a novel where we're not in a rush to get to the end, because there is nothing necessarily at the end to get to. It is about the reading experience, and it's about learning about these characters and spending time with them. And particularly with Accordion Crimes, so many of the stories are set in small town communities or small communities within larger cities, sort of different cultural pockets within cities or within towns. And so we get a very small town, tight-knit community feeling and flavor throughout all of the stories. And so there are dozens of characters that appear, and you may only get them for one chapter, or you may only get them for one scene. But while we are reading about them, you really do feel like you are sort of eavesdropping in on a small town type conversation. And something that I said in my review of the shipping news, which is very much applicable to this book as well, is that Annie Proulx does not give background information on her characters, or if she does, it is very vague. And what this allows us to do as a reader is to have our preconceptions completely stripped away about any character, where we don't have any sort of preconceived prejudices about them, but we are learning who they are simply from their actions or their conversations with other characters interactions with them, or their interactions with others. And so it lets us really form our own opinion as a reader of these characters and what they are made of. And so because of that, you really have full sympathy for every character involved, because we don't come out of the gate knowing, oh, okay, this is the character that I'm supposed to have sympathy for, this is the character that I'm supposed to be rooting against or rooting for, or this is, this character is the one who did something bad to this character. Instead, we get information, we get conversation, but we don't get sort of any pointed fingers saying this person is this and this person is that. Instead, it's up to us to sort of form our own opinions about these characters rather than being told exactly who or what they are. And for me, at least, I really enjoyed that fact of not having any background information on a character that we don't need. Any sort of pertinent information is delivered to us, but anything that sort of is not important or doesn't directly correlate to the story at hand is left out. And I think that makes it feel like you're having a real conversation, because just like in real life, if you're talking to someone, particularly if it's someone you don't know or if it's someone you just struck up a conversation with, you're not going to get their entire life story, you're not going to get their full biography, but you are going to get some information about themselves if it's a conversation that pertains to personal information being shared. And with that information, you will then use that to form an opinion of that person. So just like a real life conversation would be held in that fashion, the conversations in Accordion Crimes and the dialogues and interactions within the book are held in a very similar way. So it feels incredibly authentic and very realistic. And so it gives you a feeling of really being privy to an authentic conversation that could actually take place. There are 8 different families that are sort of main characters or main set pieces throughout the novel, and they do go in chronological order. So we start with the very first immigrant family moving to America from Italy, and that is the accordion maker himself, sort of who kicks off this entire story. And then each family that we get after our first family falls later and later on the chronological timeline. So by the time we get to the end of the novel, it is in the 1990s. And so it's also really interesting to see how Proulx writes the chronological progression and how she handles integrating the changes that happened in technology and in society and in the world as the years progress. And I found that incredibly enjoyable. So those are just a couple of my thoughts about this book. I don't want to ramble on too much or too long here, but I would definitely recommend this, especially if you are a fan of the shipping news or Barkskins, then I would highly recommend this. Also, if you are a fan of Steinbeck, I would highly recommend Annie Proulx. She feels very, very similar to the writing style of John Steinbeck, which is an author very close to my heart. East of Eden is one of my all-time favorite novels, and I felt a lot of similarities between Annie Proulx's writing and Steinbeck's writing, particularly between this novel and East of Eden and Grapes of Wrath. There seemed to be a lot of similarities, particularly sort of in the structure of characters and in scene building and in descriptions, having landscapes and geographical locations playing the roles of lead characters is very much present in Proulx's writing as it is in Steinbeck's writing, and that is something that I absolutely love and I really wish more authors would do. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble again. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you would like, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now, and happy reading.